On the sales team here at North American, and I'll be hosting the session today. Our presenter is Jared Gwynn. Jared is the Director of Sales Development and National Accounts with us, and he's been with us going on 10 years now, and today he's taking a look at InsMark. And now InsMark is our comparison software tool that you as contracted agents have access to. So be ready to take a few notes. We'll get those questions answered. I just want to give a gentle reminder that this is not in any way going to make you an expert with InsMark, but it's definitely going to get you headed in that right direction. Now, before I hand the controls over to Jared, I just want to remind everyone that today's session is being recorded, and you will receive an email with that recorded link. Take a quick look at that GoToWebinar toolbar for me. You'll notice that there are some handouts that are available for you to download. You will see that 3 of those handouts are for those of you that have not downloaded that InsMark software yet. And they're designed to help you with that download process, and they're regarding the browser that you currently use. So that will be either Chrome, Firefox, or Internet Explorer, the 3 popular ones. So depending on which browser you use, grab that handout only if you have not downloaded the InsMark software yet. Now, if you have any questions, be sure to use that question box or that chat box, and we're going to get those answered for you as soon as we can. One more thing. If you're using that computer for audio and you have any problems where that audio happens to cut out, please dial in by phone, and you'll see that number over in that GoToWebinar toolbar as well. Again, thanks so much for joining us. Jared, over to you.
All right. Well, thank you, Stacy, and thank you to all of you for taking the time to join me today. As Stacy said, today we're going to be talking about InsMark, but more specifically, we're going to be talking about a few examples of how you can use InsMark to increase your case size, close more permanent sales, and make more revenue with North American Life. So my goal in our time together today is that as we go through these case studies, you're going to have clients that come to mind that fit these profiles. And I would just ask that you would simply write those names down and then reach out to your MGA or your North American contact so we can turn them from some names on a paper to some additional revenue in your pocket. Let's go ahead and get started here. Before we get right into the presentation, here's some disclosures. So how can InsMark help you accomplish the objectives I've stated? Increasing your case size, closing more permanent sales, growing your revenue. It's really pretty simple. As the quote on the screen states, there's no new ideas. There's only new ways of making them felt. And if you've been in the business for any time at all, you know that that really is true. There aren't a whole lot of brand new ideas, so it comes down to coming up with new ways to share those ideas with your clients and prospects so that the solutions that you're showing them, which can change their life, are easier for them to understand. So how does InsMark help you accomplish that? It's really in 3 main ways. Number 1, by providing a lot of white space for your clients to look at. Now, I know that we're virtual here today, but if we were together, I would ask you right now to raise your hand if you've ever sat in front of a client and you show them a 30-page, 35-page life insurance ledger just to see their eyes glaze over as they try to take in these pieces of paper that are just loaded with words and numbers that may not make a whole lot of sense to them yet. And I'm sure that if we were together, everyone's hands would be up right now. And as you'll see here in a bit, InsMark is really a complement to your life insurance illustration. It gives your clients something to look at that pulls out some of the most important information for them to focus on, and it accomplishes this with a lot of white space on the page, so it's not cluttered up for your client to see. The second thing, InsMark is a powerful comparison tool. If you've ever been meeting with clients, you go through your entire presentation about why permanent life insurance is a solution that should be a part of their overall plan. They seem to be tracking with you every step of the way. All signs are pointing to them signing on the dotted line, just to get a call a couple of days later that, they met with their uncle, who's a plumber, and he said, nobody should buy permanent life insurance. Instead, you should put as much money as you can into your 401k and into some mutual funds. And your clients say, that made a lot of sense to us. That's what we're hearing really from everyone. So we're just going to continue to do that. So if you've ever experienced that, and I know that I did when I was an advisor for 7 years, then you're going to love some of these modules that we're going to go through today. They're going to help you answer the questions that your clients aren't bringing up right now, but that will be coming from them soon. And then finally, it simplifies your presentations. As I said earlier, InsMark helps you take something that can be confusing and complicated to a client and turns it into something that's simple and understandable to them. So those are some of the reasons why, as you see InsMark, I think you're going to want to implement that into your practice right away. So here's our agenda today. These are the 3 InsMark modules we're going to be going through, and we're going to go through them by talking through different case studies. That's always the easiest way for me to learn, is to see some real live examples. And like I said earlier, I know that your time is very important. So to make sure this is a profitable use of your time, please make sure to write down those names of clients that pop into your head that fit these ideas, so we can turn these into some revenue for you today. So let's go ahead and jump into our first case study here today. So here we have Mr. Saber. Now, Mr. Saber is a 40-year-old with a wife and a couple of kids. They have a nice annual income, as you can see, of $100,000, and they've been good savers since they first got married. I'm sure you are all thinking of some of your clients right now that sound a lot like this. So in going through their plan with them, you uncover that there's a life insurance need of an additional $1 million of coverage. Now, as we all know, the easy sale would be to get them $1 million of term and just, kind of plan to manage some of their money as they're in the accumulation stage, with the hopes of managing their rollover when they retire. But that all of their long-term savings is wrapped up in qualified plans. So to have a plan whose success is very dependent on tax rates being low in the future and the stock market delivering, which are a couple of things that none of us have any control over at all. You also know that Mr. Saver puts 10% of his income into his 401k plan at work and has a 3% company match that's dollar for dollar. So here's a solution that we're going to take a look at today. The solution we're going to look at is taking the unmatched 401k contribution of $7,000. We're going to net that down to reflect the tax consequences of your client taking this now as income instead of deferring it. And we're going to look at putting it into the Builder Plus 2. And I'll talk a little bit more in here in just a minute about why the Builder Plus 2 for this particular instance. We're also going to put a 30-year advantage term on Mr. Saber to make sure he's properly covered, because as we all know, our first job and most important job is to make sure that the client has the right amount of coverage, even before we make sure they have the right type of coverage. And in case you weren't aware, our advantage term products are convertible to any of our currently marketed permanent plans, and they also have living benefits built in of chronic, critical, and terminal illness, which we don't underwrite for, and we also include them at no additional cost. So how can we show this solution to Mr. and Mrs. Saver to get them to make a change? Because as we all know, the easiest thing for a client to do is just to keep doing what they're already doing. And that's really where InsMark and the other investments versus your policy module comes into play. So before we get right into InsMark, I'm going to go into our illustration software and just talk through a couple of key design tips, and then we will get right into the InsMark. So bear with me here a second. We are going to log in to the website. We're going to go to our web-based illustrations. And I've already saved the illustrations today just to save us the time of having to go through every single thing kind of as we're doing this. So bear with me a minute and we will pull up the case that we already have saved here, assuming that it comes up. So we're going to go to View My Cases, and we're going to take a look at Mr. Saver. So while that's pulling up, I'd said that for this particular case, we're going to take a look at the Builder Plus 2. So in case you're not familiar with our product lineup, the Builder Plus 2 is an indexed universal life product that is really designed for these longer term accumulation and distribution sales. Now, a couple of reasons why that is: it's our highest cap product. So it has a 10.25% cap on the S&P 500 annual point to point, and it also has a multiplier. But the multiplier begins in year one. It's 15% for the first 10 years, so it's an index multiplier. And then beginning in years 11 plus, it's 10% for the life of the contract. It also has a 1% interest bonus that is contractually guaranteed when your client has money in the index funds, and that kicks in beginning year 11 plus. And then it also has a variable rate loan that is capped at 6% and begins in policy year one. So just to walk through a few of the main things to pay attention to when you're doing this, a few things to look at here. So the solve that we want to make sure to use for this is multiple, right? Because we're going to solve for what the death benefit is, and then also what the distributions are in the future. We want to do this in a way that brings our death benefit as low as possible. So we're going to do a minimum death benefit and a max distribution solve. So those are a couple of things, if you're writing down on a piece of paper, that you'll want to keep in mind as you're designing this case. We're going to keep it at $1 of surrender value at age 120, and we're going to do loans. Now, I know that a lot of you may have been taught, I know I was taught early in my career, that you always do withdrawals to tax basis and then loans. But the way that the policies are designed today with these variable rate loans, it really makes the most sense to set these up as loans right from the very beginning, because we want to keep that money at work inside of our policy versus withdrawing the amount that could be continuing to earn us an index return. And we're going to go with a variable rate loan, which again, that's a participating loan for some of you that may not be as familiar. And basically it makes it so that as you pull money out of the policy as a loan, the policy acts like that money is still in there. We're going to charge an interest rate on it. Today we're charging 4%. The max we can charge is 6%. And then it's going to get the index credits still going on in the policy. So even as you are using your money, it's continuing to grow for you. We're going to set the variable interest rate on the loan at 5.27%. And the reason we're going to do that is if you look down here, we're going to do an illustrated rate of 6.27%. So we're going to run this at an assumed rate of 6.27%, which is the look back based on the S&P 500 annual point to point, looking at a 65-year period and 25-year rolling periods inside of that. So that's going to be kind of our maximum assumed rate. So because it's 6.27% with AG 49 guidelines, the old ones, not the new ones that are coming out here soon, but it said that you could have a maximum of a 1% arbitrage inside of your loan rate. So the best thing to do is just to set this variable interest loan rate at 1 point less than what you are assuming for your index return. We're gonna start taking money out at the age of 68, and we're gonna stop that at the age of 100. And again, to get the most out of this, we're gonna show a monthly distribution frequency, because that allows our money to stay in there a little longer versus an annual loan, which pulls it out, and then we don't have the year for the additional money to continue to go. And we're gonna go ahead and make sure that we're avoiding a modified endowment contract for this particular product. The death benefit's already on a solve, and the last thing I really want to talk through from a design perspective is the death benefit option. Now, a lot of you may use level, which is going to just do a solve for what is that level amount of death benefit we can get that is low as possible to keep from being a modified endowment contract that doesn't go up or down. A lot of the others of you probably have been taught, as I was taught, that when you're doing a solve to try to get a low death benefit and a high amount of distributions in the future, you always start with an increasing death benefit while you're funding the policy, and then you switch that over to level at the end of the funding period. And that's, if you want to get the most out of this policy, that is how you would design it. But the reason that I'm going to have us showing a return of premium death benefit option is because I want us to create something for the client that has a high likelihood of actually occurring. Because one of the downsides of starting with an increasing and changing to level is that in the future, we're looking at a 40-year-old here, we're going to be funding this till the age of 68 and then taking money out. So if we think about what are the odds that in 28 years, either we as advisors or our clients are going to remember to change that over from an increasing to a level death benefit are pretty slim. And so if that doesn't occur, there's going to be some downsides to the policy where it's going to hurt the accumulation, it's going to hurt the distribution. The other thing to keep in mind is I know that here we're showing on a linear basis that we're going to put our premium in, they're going to pay it monthly every single month all the way until they are age 68, then they're going to stop paying it. But as you and I all know, there's not a high likelihood of that actually happening. What's probably going to happen is 3 or 4 years into this, your client's going to give you a call and say, you know what, we had some unexpected bills pop up. We just had to buy a new car. I know that you told us this was a flexible life insurance policy when we got it? Is there any way we can just pause it for 1 year and then start paying the premiums again? Well, if you're doing an increasing, changing over to level, then you're kind of stuck with, if you don't remember to go in and change it, it's going to eat away at the client's policy in those years that they decide not to put the money in. So again, that's kind of my spiel as to why I'd recommend the return of premium death benefit, because by choosing the return of premium death benefit option, you'll see here in just a minute on the illustration, basically it's going to start it at a low death benefit amount, but every year that premium we pay is going to increase the death benefit. So when they're done paying premium, or if they don't pay premium for a year, the death benefit doesn't increase, which increases the cost of insurance inside of it. So set it up with a return of premium death benefit utilizing guideline premium test. We're going to put it in for $437 a month, monthly, all the way up to age 68. And like we already talked about, the illustrated rate of return that we're going to use is 6.27%. Now, where you would go from here to get to InsMark, you go to output options. And then down here, after you kind of input the information you want in, you would very simply click InsMark. Now, I already have it loaded up for us, so we'll go to that in just a second, but just wanted you to see where that's located. So now let's just take a quick glance at the illustration before we continue on here. Wanted to save us the time of it rendering. So, we're putting in $52.50 a year, or $437.50 on a monthly basis, and you can see that gets us a starting death benefit of $231,118. And like we talked about, we're also getting the term on top of this to make sure that they're properly covered from day one. So just a couple things I wanted to point out before we go into the InsMark. They're going to put in their premium, and as you can see, that $231,118 grows by the premium amount to $236,000. So every year, that's how that return of premium death benefit option works. So we're going to pay our premium, like we said, up to the age of 68. Then we're going to stop paying premium. Our death benefit's going to stop growing, and we're going to start taking out loans as a variable rate loan, and we're going to be able to pull out $34,272. Now, again, I'm sure many of you have shown these illustrations before, and the clients think that they're great, but the questions that they aren't asking you right now are, but how does that compare to something else I do? Or, but what if I just kept paying into my 401k? So let's take a look here now at the InsMark illustration and see what it could do for you. So when you go into InsMark, this is what's going to pop up for you. Now, normally you'd be creating a new client workbook, but because I already have this saved, we're going to go in and use a different client workbook. So as that is loading here, we're going to use Mr. Saver. That's our first case study today. Now, if this were brand new, again, what you would actually be seeing is, one second, this is all the different modules you could choose from. So you could do permanent versus term, which is like a term and invest the difference for that client that really likes the idea of just buying term and investing the other monies. This can show you how that could work out for them versus purchasing some permanent life insurance. The one we're going to use is other investments versus your policy. That's what you would choose there. So this is what your input screens are going to look like. We're going to illustrate through year 60, which takes us out to age 100. And we're going to use a 25% effective rate for a tax bracket. Now, normally I would put an effective rate in here of 15% or so, which is closer to actually what a client is probably paying, but just for the ease of easy numbers and be able to see where the different netting down is coming from, I just chose to use 25%. Now, this is also one place where InsMark can be really powerful for you to show your clients. If, let's say you're meeting with a client that believes that tax rates are relatively low today, but they think that, when they go to retire in 25, 30 years, their tax rates are actually going to be considerably higher. So you could come in here and you could show a second tax rate of 40%, 45%, whatever they think it's going to go up to starting in a different year, which is a really good way to show them a 401k or an IRA or a SEP or a simple, something that they're deferring taxes on today and could be deferring a lower tax today to a higher tax in the future. But for now, we're going to leave that off just to keep it simple here. So here's what you'd put in for investment details. And this is where, again, you can see the power of the InsMark system, the ability to choose a lot of different things that your client is doing. You could choose from a money market account, a CD, a muni bond fund, an equity account for those clients that are maybe putting money into their mutual funds or into a managed account with their client. But what we're going to choose here is a tax-deductible retirement plan. That's going to be, again, your IRAs, your 401k, simple plans, set plans, etc. So we're going to use the tax-deductible retirement plan. And for this, the only charge that I put in here was a management fee of 1%. So just consider that the overall charges inside of your client's 401k. And I looked it up just to make sure that I wasn't out of line with this. And a lot of folks do estimate that they're getting charged about 1% total to have their 401k, but the real numbers are that the actual consumer is paying about 2.22% inside of their 401k. So we're going to leave it at 1% to stay pretty conservative. And then the final thing I wanted to show you is that we're going to put the yield, the rate of return on the 401k at 6.27%. We're going to match it up with what we're getting inside of our Builder Plus 2 product. Now, you may think that's too high, too low, but keep in mind the beauty of InsMark is that you can choose what it is. The other thing that is really powerful in here is you can show your client that, we're showing them a 6.27% rate of return in their 401k, and they're getting that every single year. They have no zeros, no negative 30s, no plus 30s inside of it. If you had a client that wanted to see what the effects of the sequence of returns could actually have on their portfolio, you can utilize this. You can put your own yields in here, or like I did here, just to give us an example, I said, hey, give me a random yield, do anywhere from negative 20 in a given year up to 35% for all years. And when I apply that, it's actually showing us an average yield of 7.5%. And I'll show you here in just a minute how that actually, what that does to our plan. So we're going to leave it for now at that 6.27% yield, just on a every year basis. Then you can go into report selections and you can customize this as much as you want. For me, I like to keep it relatively simple, but you can put on cover pages. You can put on all kinds of different things to make this look the way that you want it to. But for us, we're going to keep it pretty simple here. We're going to go into preview. And this is what it's going to print out for you to give you a real professional looking presentation to go through with your client. Now, some of these are disclosures. Here we have some charts, which I'm not going to spend a ton of time on because we have a limited amount of time today. But this is going to give, for those more visual type clients, it's going to give them some charts to look at. But what I think is the most powerful is the comparison of values. So what this is showing is a side-by-side, basically of their current plan, which is their tax-deductible retirement plan, their 401k today, versus if they were to take that money that's unmatched, stop putting it into the 401k, and start putting it into the Builder Plus 2, what would happen? So a couple things that I would make sure to point out as you're going through this with your clients. First, I would talk about the gross versus the net amount. So today, they're putting $7,000 a year into their 401k. Now, if they stop putting that money in today, that goes from being a deferral to being realized income, right? So now they're going to get taxed on that $7,000 as ordinary income, which is why we don't show the full $7,000 going into the life insurance policy. We show a netted down amount. And what's going to happen in reality, after your client looks at this and goes, man, this is amazing. Is there any reason I only have to put $5,250 into this? You can tell them they can put more money into it. But if you don't net it down, what I've seen happen a lot of times, you'll go through this plan, your client will want to take it with them, and usually we'd be looking at even higher premium amounts here. They're going to take it to their CPA, their accountant. And if you've shown them something where it's not netting down and taking into account the fact that they're getting a tax deduction today for that money, then the CPA is going to blow it up, going to make it look like you don't know what you're doing, and all of a sudden you're going to lose your sale. So we're going to net it down by the 25% income tax rate, and that's going to show us what's going into the 401k versus what's going into our Builder Plus 2. And then this is going to show them, at year end inside of their 401k, there's going to be $7,300 $165. Now, if they were to take that and just take the money out, they'd receive about $4,800, which also takes into account the 10% penalty they'd have to pay. And if they were to pass away, they would have $5,524 to pass along to their heirs. So again, a few things I'd make sure to point out. One, the gross versus the net, to make sure your client understands that. The second thing that I like to point out is the death benefit amount on the life insurance and how it increases every year versus the after-tax death benefit of their tax-deductible plan. And the reason I think that's incredibly important is, most of our clients and a lot of things they hear on the radio or on the TV is building plans that are going to work only under a very specific set of circumstances. They're going to work if tax rates don't increase in the future. They're going to work if the stock market returns what we said. They're going to work if we don't die or become disabled or have a long-term care type issue anytime between now and when we pass away. So what you're showing them is, here's their plan that works under one set of circumstances. Here's a plan you can show them with no additional out-of-pocket dollars that will work under a variety of circumstances. So in case things don't go exactly as planned, this will still work for them. So I know that we are a little limited on time, so I'm going to keep going here. This will show the accumulation stage, and then we start taking money out at the age of 68, and we're going to take out $34,000 from both sides. For the life insurance side, as you all know, it's a tax-free loan that's coming to us. On the 401k side, obviously they're going to have to take out considerably more than that to net that same amount, which is what happens over here when it continues on, and you can see that their current plan runs out of money at the age of 80, whereas we continue to go out to the age of 100 and still have a net death benefit left over to pass on of $103,000. So the first question your client's going to have is, why? How come nobody's told me this before? Why is it working that way, et cetera? And so this is one thing I would make sure to put in here, and that's the taxation of cash flow. And this is going to show them a little bit of the why behind how come their current plan runs out of money when this other plan continues. And that is because of the fact that we're not paying taxes up front, we're going to pay them later. So for them to take the same amount of money or receive the same amount of money out of their IRA at that point to receive that net amount of $34,000, they're going to have to take out $45,000 a year. The other thing to make sure and talk to them about is leverage. It's the ability to, in the life insurance, to not have to actually take the money out to use it. We're going to loan it, and it's going to continue to work for us. So again, just a few things to go through on that, and I could spend probably the whole 45 minutes on just this one module. But again, as we kind of get back into this, the question I would ask as I'm pulling up the presentation here again is very simply, who do you know? Who's coming to mind in your book of business that's between the ages of 35 to 55? They have a lot of their savings tied up in qualified plans. It's all going to be taxable in the future. They have a need for life insurance, and they would benefit from some risk and tax diversification. So again, hopefully those names are coming to mind and you've been able to write those down. So moving on here, here's our second case study, and it's on Mrs. Smart. Now, Mrs. Smart is 65 years old. She's in relatively good health. She has $300,000 sitting in a money market account today. And what's important to her is, one, leaving a legacy to her family, to her kids and to her grandkids. But she also has some concerns about future health expenses. She's just experienced that her parents went through, 2 or 3 years in a nursing home. She had to see kind of what that did to them, and how that affected them, and then also how it affected the family. So she's very concerned about that. Now, a lot of times what I hear from advisors is that this type of client, they've tried to show them a few different things. They've tried to show them putting the money into an annuity. They've tried to show them putting the money into a managed account. But a lot of times the reason they want to keep it in the money market account or the CD is a couple things. One, it's liquid, and two, it's safe. And so we're going to show you a unique solution that really is only available here in North America. And I have not seen another IUL product from another carrier that works like our Smart Builder with the waiver of surrender charge rider on it. So I'm going to go into that real quick and just show again a couple of the kind of design details to pay attention to as you're designing this. And as I'm looking that up and getting it up here, let me tell you a little bit about the Smart Builder. Now, the Smart Builder is an IUL policy. It has an 8.5% cap on the S&P 500 annual point to point. What's really unique about this product is just remember zero. So it has a 0% premium load, it has a 0% floor, and it has a 0% surrender charge if you utilize the waiver of surrender charge rider. So that's what we're going to be showing today to help overcome that question of, one of the reasons people in this situation typically don't like to put their money into life insurance is because they lose that liquidity. So let's take a look at this real quick. We're going to go with standard. Just make sure you click yes on does the policy owner intend to waive the surrender charges. That's going to enact that waiver of surrender charge rider. Now for this, we're going to solve for the death benefit, and we want to choose the minimum death benefit possible, but we are not trying to avoid a MEC. We're going to go ahead and we're going to make this a modified endowment contract, which basically just changes the taxation of the buildup of the cash value if they were to take it out. It's going to be taxed like an annuity now versus being tax-free like it would be if we were to avoid a MEC. We're going to do the cash value accumulation test. We're going to put the $250,000 in right away. And then the last thing I'd point out is that we're going to illustrate this at 5.41%, which is the assumed rate at our cap of 8.5% on the S&P 500 annual point to point. So now let's just take a quick look here at what this illustration would look like. So your client would put in $250,000. It is going to be fully underwritten. Now, if she were under the age of, if she was 60 or under, she would be really close to falling into our right-of-way guidelines. But for this, it's going to be fully underwritten. So she's going to put in $250,000, and that $250,000 is immediately going to become $531,000 of tax-free death benefit to her heirs. So we've already taken care of that. Now, the other thing to point out here is that $250,000, if you look from a guaranteed standpoint, you can see at the end of year one, she has $250,000 available. Using a 2.5% non-guaranteed rate without the charges going up to the maximum, she'd have $252,000 at the end of year one. And using our assumed rate of 5.41%, she would have $259,000 of walkaway money if she would choose at the end of year one. And then from there on out, you can see that it grows because we're pushing corridor here. So let's look to see what InsMark could use to help us show this to our client. So we're going to go in here to the workbook that I've already saved. And what we're going to use is various financial alternatives. So we're going to illustrate through year 35. That's going to take us out to age 100. We're going to keep that same tax bracket that we talked about in the previous one. But what this module is going to help you do is help to answer some of the questions that your client's going to bring up when you show them a life insurance solution, really before they even bring them up. Because we're going to be able to show this client, Mrs. Smart, what her current plan looks like, projected out, which is keeping that money in the money market account. We're going to be able to show her what it would look like in some other things also. Now, one thing that I failed to point out, but we said that she had $300,000 sitting in her money market account. Now, one mistake that I've seen made plenty of times is, an advisor will come in and try to take that full $300,000 and put it into something. And, what I see be a lot more successful is leaving your client with some liquid dollars outside of this. So we're going to leave $50,000 for her to keep in the money market account, and we're just going to take the $250,000. That's going to help her feel a little bit more comfortable, like she still has that money where she's liked it to be that whole time, and it's going to help us with lapse ratios on these policies. So we're going to have, I put a 1% yield on her money market account, obviously no fees or anything else inside of it. And as you all know, 1% is also pretty aggressive, but I always want to build an InsMark to give the client the benefit of the doubt with other things they could consider doing. The second thing we're going to look at is a CD. So usually I find if somebody has money in a money market, other things they would consider would be a CD, an annuity, perhaps some bonds, etc. So we're going to show a CD at a 2% yield. And then we're also going to show an annuity. And I was just assuming maybe this is a MIGA, a multi-year guarantee at 3% with, again, no charges inside of it. So what this does is gives you the chance to show Mrs. Smart all of these things side by side. here are all the different places you could possibly put this money, and here's how they would actually work for you over time. And I'm going to make this just a little bit bigger so you can see it. So again, we have our money market at 1%, CD at 2%, annuity at 3%, our income tax rate of 25%, and we're showing this at 5.41% based on the 8.5% cap on the S&P 500. So a few things that I would make sure to point out to Mrs. Smart here would be, number one, how much she has at the end of year one, and the fact that all of these are liquid to her if she would choose to change her mind. The second thing I'd make to point out is leverage. Again, the legacy that this one provides her from year one, because we don't know what's going to happen between now and the age of 84 or 85, when some of these other things might start to kind of catch up from a legacy standpoint. So I would make sure to point that out. And the third thing I would make sure to point out is very simply the living benefits, right? And I haven't had time to hit on those, but the critical, the chronic, and the terminal illness benefits that would be included in this case, in this product, at no additional cost, no additional underwriting. We said that she had just gone through and experienced her parents being in nursing homes. That's the last thing she wants to do, to be a burden to her children or to spend down the estate that she was planning on passing to them. This really takes you from looking at all these other alternatives, which are a dollar for dollar type benefit if she were to go into a nursing home, and turns it into much closer to a $1 for $2 type benefit by being able to accelerate up to 24% of the death benefit on an annual basis, up to there being about 5% left in the policy. So again, this is just a powerful way to show your client that has lazy money sitting on the sidelines, something they could do with it to put it to work today without losing liquidity and with gaining some additional benefits from it. Now, the final case study that I wanted to take us through is actually the same exact case study we just went through. But the reason I wanted to bring this one up is this is really for those of you who are on the webinar that maybe in the past you sold our Rapid Builder product, which was the product that we had before the Smart Builder. And maybe you like to show that one again as an alternative to CDs or an alternative to annuities or something like that. And so you're either continuing to sell that product, which thank you for selling that on the Smart Builder, or perhaps you've kind of gone away from it because our caps did come down some on that product. So what I wanted to show you is something else that you could be showing to your clients really in this same situation. And this is really for those clients that have a little bit longer of a time horizon as far as what's most important to them in looking at this. So what we're going to do is we're going to show two different alternatives. And again, due to time, I'm not going to be able to show you exactly how to illustrate all of these, but I am going to show you how to illustrate this second one because it is slightly different than what you've probably done in the past. And this is going to be utilizing the Smart Builder again, but we're going to design it slightly different than we had. And really the design difference is we're not going to put on the waiver of surrender charge rider. And you're going to see that there's still a lot of liquidity, and there's even more guarantees in the policy. So the way that you want to illustrate this is the first thing is we do not intend to waive the surrender charges. So don't check that. Now the solve, we're going to specify versus letting it solve for the death benefit. And what we're going to do is we're going to specify the death benefit of $250,000, which is the same as our premium. And basically what that's going to do is it's going to bring our death benefit down, and then it's going to push corridor right away. So basically all you're doing is you're showing this solution to your client of a Smart Builder, which is a very liquid product up front, but you're showing it without the waiver of surrender charge on it. And I'm going to show you why right away here. So one second. So this is what the illustration would look like. And as you can see, we put in 250, and it's going to say that our starting death benefit is 250, but you can see here that at the end of year one, it's 554,000. Now, when we underwrite this, we're going to underwrite for this amount, which is the exact same amount that it would be if you put it in the Smart Builder with the waiver of surrender charge rider. But a couple things I want to point out to you. By designing it this way, you can see we still have amazing liquidity up front. In year one, on a guaranteed basis, there's $244,000. On a non-guaranteed, but at 2.5%, $246,000. And if you look here, our net cash surrender value at the end of year one without the waiver is $253,000, which is more than what she put in. The other thing to really pay attention to, for those clients that are very sensitive to the guaranteed death benefit and the guaranteed column just in general, by utilizing this type of a build, you can see that it guarantees all the way out to age, really it goes all the way to age 120 at the 250 that basically she put in. But if you look closer to age 85, which is a lot closer to life expectancy, you can see that there's still a guaranteed death benefit of $335,000. Now, as you all know, that's assuming that from day one, we took every possible charge in this policy and moved it to the maximums. They never got an index return. The only thing they ever got was the 2.5% that's guaranteed inside of our policy. So as you and I know, if that actually occurred, you would be moving this policy away from us very quickly. But just this gives a client peace of mind as they look and see that no matter what, this policy has a lot of guarantees built into it. So the last thing I want to show you here on InsMark then is how you take this particular idea and you show your client just a few different ways that they could look at this solution. And we're going to use InsMark Compare, which allows you to put side by side a few different policies of ours. So what we're going to show is we're going to show the Smart Builder with the waiver, like we did in the previous case study. We're going to show that next to the Smart Builder without the waiver of surrender charge. And then we're going to finally show it versus the Builder Plus 2, where we're going to put the $250,000 in as a lump sum and see how that performs. So this is how you'd be able to come in and really customize this for what you wanted to see. But ultimately, this is what you're going to be able to show your client. I'm going to zoom it out here just a little bit. So what you're doing here is you've already shown your client that, you know, doing a life insurance policy with a waiver on it could be very effective to them. And it's something that they're going to look at and they're going to say, yes, I like that idea. It keeps my liquidity. It gives me guarantees and peace of mind. And it improves my legacy to my heirs. So what you're going to show here is, you know, the three different policies basically that she could put it in with North American. So here you can see the Smart Builder with waiver, the Smart Builder without waiver, and then the Builder Plus 2 when we do a lump sum. Now, what I'm actually kind of pointing you towards here is a couple of things. Number one, to have the what's most important to you conversation with your client. You know, is it most important to have liquidity really early? Is it more important to have more guarantees built in, but with good liquidity early? Or is it more important to have better long-term values and give up a little liquidity early on? And so, you know, just to make this even simpler for you to see, I put together just a real quick chart. Give me 1 second here to show you. Give me 1 second to show you what this could look like for your client. So if they were to go with the Smart Builder with the waiver of surrender charge, in the first 3 years, it's going to have the highest net cash surrender value, but it's never going to have the highest account value, and it's never going to have the highest death benefit. Now, if they go with the Smart Builder without the waiver of surrender charge rider, that second option that we looked at, then beginning year 4 through 10, they'd have the highest net cash surrender value. They'd have the highest account value beginning in year 1 and going through year 9, and they'd have the highest death benefit in years 1 through 9. Now, the Builder Plus 2, again, it really comes down to what's most important to your client. But if they're okay with giving up some liquidity up front, and that's, again, one of the reasons you don't want to take all their money they had in the money market accounts, put it in here. But if they're okay with giving up a little liquidity now to have more liquidity later, then the Builder Plus 2 is actually going to have a higher cash surrender value from years 11 on. It's going to have the highest account value from years 10 on, and it's going to have the highest death benefit amount from years 10 on. And the reason I think that's important is because the death benefit, one, it's the legacy to their heirs, but number two, it also is what pushes the terminal, chronic, and critical illness benefits. So again, I know we are actually a little bit over on time here, but I would ask you to think about, who do you know? Who do you know that's between the ages of 55 and 70? They have some lazy money sitting in low interest bearing accounts, and they're concerned about their legacy and perhaps long-term care type issues in the future. Make sure to write those names down and get back with us. With that being said, Stacy, did we have any questions come in? I know we're over time here. I apologize.
No worries, Jared. Lots and lots of great information there, and great little things to think about and questions to ask clients. So I personally really appreciate all of that. So thank you. We did have a couple quick questions regarding the waiver of surrender charge. How does that affect the agent's commission if that's added?
Yeah, so if you add that, and I would ask you to talk to your upline for sure to get more details, but if you add that, it brings you to just one of our commission options, which is going to be a lot closer to a trail option than a heaped option. So that is the effect on it to you. But if you go with the Smart Builder without the waiver of surrender charge rider, then there are all the commission options available.
Perfect. And regarding the case study number 2 with Mrs. Smart, what happens to that cash value if they do happen to need to accelerate for the chronic illness?
Yeah, so basically the funds inside are lowered at the same amount that the death benefit is lowered. So it brings that amount down. Now, one thing that you would want to look at in that scenario is, in each given scenario with your clients, does it make more sense to accelerate the death benefit, or does it make more sense just to take out some of the cash values at that time? But it's going to lower the amount of the cash values by the amount that you're taking out on the acceleration.
Perfect. And then we did have a question regarding the first case scenario. And I believe that the question popped up when you were towards the very end, when you were showing that the tax page where they had the 45,000 was needed. The question is, how can they show that they need to take out that 45,000 instead of the 34,000 in a comparison table? Is there that capability?
If there is, I don't know where that is inside of InsMark, and that's why I really like showing and what it is inside of here. I'll just get to it here real quick. It's the taxation of cash flow report. I would just say you want to make sure that is showing in there, because it's not going to show it. If you think about it, if we added that into the overall kind of table of values, it would start to clutter it up quite a bit more, and then we lose some of that white space. So there isn't a way that I'm aware of that you can put it into the table, but I would highly recommend always adding the taxation of cash flow report in there so that they start to understand what they're going to have to take out.
Perfect. And then this question does come through every once in a while. Can qualified money be used with any of these plans?
It cannot. It cannot be. We don't have a way to accept the qualified money. Now, if your client is over the age of 59 and a half and they have the money in an IRA or something like that, and they want to take the money out and pay the tax and then put the net into our policies, that would work. But we're not set up to take in qualified funds.
Perfect. Thanks, Jared. One last question, and then we will close things out. We did have someone ask, if you could give them real quick, what's the difference between our GPT and our CVAT? And when's the best time to use the GPT, the guideline premium test, or CVAT?
Yeah, absolutely. Without getting too detailed or too in the weeds, the way that I would look at it is, for one, anytime you're doing a lump sum, you're going to be best off showing cash value accumulation test. Now, where I think guideline premium test always makes the most sense is when you have a long time horizon. A long time horizon to fund something and then to take money out, that's where guideline premium test is going to work best. In the shorter time frames is when you want to pay attention to CVAT and kind of looking to see, you really need to experiment to see which one is going to work better. But for the most part, longer time horizons, guideline premium test, short time horizons, cash value accumulation test. But you'll want to pay attention to the necessary premium test, which is how something with CVAT can turn into a MEC. So I would have you talk a little bit more to someone offline about that, but great question.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Jared. Like I said earlier, lots and lots of great information there. So I know we did run a little bit long. I do apologize for that. And on behalf of Jared and myself, we just want to thank you so much for carving time out of your afternoon to spend with us. Remember, if you do have any additional questions that pop up, feel free to throw them on the survey. That's going to show up right at the end of this webinar, and we'll get those answered as soon as we can. Or don't hesitate to contact your internal, your upline, or feel free to give sales support here a call. Again, thanks so much for joining us, and have a fabulous rest of your day.
Yes, thank you very much.